We have some breaking news to report. Inflation has hit a 40-year high in June at 9.1%, up from 8.6% last month. While Biden said this is unacceptably high and data is out of date, he added that he will give the Fed the room it needs to fight inflation. Reports say the Federal Reserve will likely deliver an even bigger interest rate hike later this month, which could squeeze consumers even tighter.
Groceries saw the biggest hike in prices at 12%. Chicken is up 19% in the past year, the biggest increase ever, while gas is up 60%. Electricity has also gone up 14%, and rent, of course, is up nearly 6%.
Not good. Not good. People need chicken to live.
Well, look, I was also just, I was scrolling through the internet looking at this trending topic, and I saw one commentator who said we need to also change our language around this. This passive voice that is often used for police shootings. So, civilian was shot, without
was
talking about
become
who.
dead.
This is also true that landlords are raising rent. It's not that rents go up randomly. There is some aspect of this. It's not entirely attributed to this, but some aspect of this is price gouging. I saw that Costco put out a tweet. Someone asked, "Are you going to raise the price of hot dogs?" And they responded with one word, "No." And people were celebrating. Costco is stronger than inflation, and it's because a lot of these industries are still experiencing huge profit, if not record profit, and are still choosing instead to raise prices and further gouge profit and use the fact of inflation as an excuse to charge more for goods.
I don't know if landlords are experiencing historic earnings or something like that. They're probably raising your rent because the cost of everything for them goes up. So they raise. This is the whole
But
system works.
that is the thing. The costs do go up, but the cost of living for us are not going up proportionally to the costs that are actually being incurred by these people. So, for example, I believe the price of rent in New York has gone up something like, I don't want to misrepresent, but it's huge. It's like 20%. It's not the kinds of costs that would be built in with gas prices and oil or construction prices and those kinds of things. And anybody who lives in New York knows that your landlords aren't exactly spending a lot on construction and upkeep of these apartments that basically look like the tenements from the 1930s.
Sounds like a miserable, I repeat again, sounds like a miserable place to live. I don't know why anyone would want to live there. Go elsewhere. It's a big country. It's a big country with affordable places to live if you look outside New York.
But that is also not true. Statistic after statistic shows you that if you work a minimum wage salary anywhere in the United States, in Mississippi, in West Virginia, a 40-hour-a-week minimum wage salary earning full time means you cannot afford a two-bedroom apartment anywhere. Yes, you have to
need a roommate or
you need to start getting a Murphy bed. And this is not because of something that has happened in the last year. This is because even though prices have gone up even before this inflation crisis, wages have not gone up. A minimum wage, we haven't had a minimum wage raise. I say this until I'm red in the face. Since 2009, it's the longest period in American history without a wage. And what's the response of our government? To say that the problem somehow is that wages are too high and supply is too high without looking to things like the war in Ukraine, what that has done to energy prices, and how those energy prices have caused prices of other kinds of goods and services to raise around the world.
And to the extent there's any root cause here, I'm throwing my pen. I'm furious. There's a number of causes, but that is the big one, and that is a policy failure. Yeah. The U.S. government is pursuing this. We talked about this yesterday, I think. As long as it takes is what Joe Biden said is his policy for continuing this. Again, it's not solely on the U.S., obviously, to snap our fingers and say that the war's over. Russia is invading the country and is going to take some of the land of the country, but we're never going to defeat Russia. I saw a tweet from Bill Kristol, a famous neoconservative commentator. She said straightforward that all these things would happen, including the defeat of Russia. Ukraine will defeat Russia, and then everything will be fine. That's not going to happen. Yeah. And our commitment to that is screwing up our economy, our entire country. The people don't want it. They're fed up with it. Are the sanctions, what we did to deter Russia didn't work. They reaped actually record profits from doing exports.
The ruble's strong.
It's not working. It's just hurting us, and that is. But Biden is committed to this. He's reiterated his commitment to this policy that is probably one of the bigger factors for what we're dealing with right now. Obviously, supply chains were a little janky before this.
And the supply chains are part of that. I don't want to brush that aside. People are making the point also that high inflation is global. So to the extent that anyone wants to attribute it to things specifically Joe Biden can do, well, I think Joe Biden should do a lot more, because people in other countries aren't necessarily suffering the effects of inflation in the same way, because despite inflation, they still have, healthcare, affordable education, things we don't have in this country that make it easier to weather the storm. However, you have to look at these global inflation numbers with, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11% all across the world, and understand that you do have to talk about COVID and some of these supply chain issues that have come up, and particularly in the United States, the choice to offshore so much of our manufacturing so that we're hit harder by these kinds of things. And of course, we can't forget the price gouging aspect of it. I saw Bernie Sanders was tweeting about Amazon on Prime Day, complaining, Jeff Bezos complaining about he blamed inflation on a 17% price hike in Prime membership after its profits soared 450%. So they raised the cost of a Prime membership by 17%, passed that on to the consumer. At the same time that Amazon, the company, soared in profits by 450% to a record $38 billion, all while avoiding $5 billion in taxes and spending $4 million on union busting and denying workers paid sick leave.
There's no greater gulf in our opinions than when we talk about Amazon stuff. I don't care. Good for them. It's the greatest company that's ever lived. It's mastered the art of efficiently meeting human need, and they're better organized and more efficiently run than any other organization, certainly than our government.
Run at whose expense? Maybe you can afford, Robbie, to pay 17% more.
If you can't afford Amazon, you don't have to pay it. It's this voluntary.
No, we live in a country where we have decided that we have companies like Amazon taking over much of our infrastructure, they have a grocery business, they control the publishing business. You can't publish a book, you can't succeed in commerce and have a business without having a good relationship with Amazon. We cannot sit here and pretend.
Consumers.
But wait a minute, Robbie. We talk about Twitter, which is a private company and they can do what they want. We talk about Facebook. It's a private company. We can do what we want. No, we understand that at a certain point, these companies have gotten so large that they constructively are public forums. And we need to have rules and regulations going on there and keep our eye out for the fact that they can have the same kind of despotic control over our lives that the government can have, even if they are not technically the government. And I don't know how you can look at monopolistic companies like Amazon and not see that same threat there.
A lot of vibes there, to borrow a Briahna phrase.
It's not
what they have mostly done is not wielded despotic power, but vastly expanded the capacity to engage in all the things you just discussed. They have expanded my ability to shop and to buy things, to purchase books. They have expanded all of these domains. They have not constricted them. That's easier.
That's said like
they have made it easier
that's said like an affluent
things.
Consumer and not like a person who has a business or who is participating in the market.
No, I'm talking about consumers. We're all consumers. We're not all business owners, but we're all consumers.
You don't think it's despotic to have this relationship between these Amazon home devices?
I don't think we need it. We can't have our entire policy can't be to keep the corner store in business. It's like that's Luddite behavior.
We're not talking about the corner store.
We're
talking about the anti-monopolistic principles that this country was founded on, and that their founding fathers very much understood were a problem to actually having competitive enterprises that inure to the benefit of the consumer. Having monopolies is never good for a consumer, especially when they're so big and so large that they are partnering with police departments to get surveillance data from your Amazon home device on your front door. They have drones flying.
People keep saying it's not good, but it seems in fact good. Well, what Amazon delivers us seems to be good.
Well,
and most people think it's good, and most people use it.
You're a person who doesn't necessarily see the threat of even having the chips installed into your hands to scan in and out of Amazon stores. Where there is, you're right.
Here's the trade-off I'll make for you. Here's what I'll do for you. We should no subsidies, no favorable tax whatevers. When the red carpet was rolled out for Amazon so they could headquarter in DC or across the river, and they've renamed the whole place. Yes, ridiculous. None of that. I don't want any favoritism. I don't want any special favors. That is the domain of Amazon in which I am most concerned. Their ability to buy legislators or say, oh yeah, we might do something here if you kind of change the package to be more favorable to us. That's wrong. There's none of that. I'm against all of that, etc. We were yelling at each other a minute ago, but I take seriously the concerns to publishing, to free speech. I have been very critical of Amazon's policies on a lot of these fronts. I think they deserve criticism for them. I'm not being myopic saying there's no benefit or there's no downside to any of this stuff, but there is also considerable benefit. And
no one's arguing the benefit. The question is, who does the benefit accrue to? If Amazon increases its profits by 450% during a pandemic when the rest of the world is suffering, including their workers are being forced to take, be subsidized by the government, by the taxpayer, because they're not being paid a fair wage. What we design our systems. We can choose, and we have chosen differently at different points in American history, to hold our corporate overlords to a higher standard and not say that unlimited profit at the expense of our democracy, because again, they use that money to buy elections the way that Michael Bloomberg tried to do. They use that money to influence Congress and the laws that are passed. There is that Princeton study that shows that we do not live in a democracy anymore, because the likelihood that something the majority of citizens want passing is absolutely nil unless it happens to align with the interests of corporate elites. That's the problem. It's not that I'm mad that he's going to buy too many Teslas or an elevator for his cars like Mitt Romney. The concern with people getting that much wealth is, one, that it's extracted from the labor of working Americans who are seeing a smaller and smaller piece of the pie, and also that they use that obscene wealth to literally buy our democracy.
Amazon didn't shut down the country, didn't shut down all of the local business, all of the reality of the pandemic, which did benefit Amazon, a lot of these other tech companies, but they didn't do that. The government did that.
No, but that's not the question. The question is whether or not they should have been, one, bailed out by the government, gotten all these PPP loans.
They should not have been.
And additionally, whether or not, as we're talking about inflation and why prices are so high, whether or not we're going to stop caping for and protecting the corporatists who are stealing money out of the pockets of American laborers, and instead hold them responsible for price gouging at a moment of public vulnerability.
By stealing, you mean extorting the government for special treatment and benefits and bailouts and monies, I agree. Stealing.
No.
If by stealing you mean providing people things they want in exchange they're voluntarily participating in, then no.
Profiting by not paying their workers a fair wage. And Americans are consumers, but they're also workers. You're workers as well.
All right, well, we are going to get some guests to talk about inflation for tomorrow or next week, and instead of us just volleying back and forth, but we'll have more on this subject in a later date, and we'll be back with more Rising right after this.